The Indiana Fever are your 2025 Commissioner's Cup champions. Last night, they beat the Minnesota Lynx 74-59. And with this, you guys, they do get a $500,000 pot that will be split among the team. So they did win some money, and that's really cool. Before this game, I was like, Commissioner's Cup doesn't matter. It's not even a real game. It doesn't count towards their record. I don't care who wins. And then the Indiana Fever won, and I was so hyped for them. Like, it actually felt like a real championship game. But I think I was so excited because this was such an unexpected win for the Fever. The Lynx were heading into this game only having lost 2 games on the season, and they were also undefeated at home.
What happens when the star you've relied on all season is suddenly out? For the Indiana Fever, it wasn't defeat, it was domination. Missing Caitlin Clark, they upset the reigning champs, the Minnesota Lynx, to claim their first ever Commissioner's Cup. How did they do it, and what was Clark's response from the sidelines? Let's break down this jaw-dropping underdog victory. Imagine being the centerpiece of your team, carrying the hopes of a franchise, and then suddenly you're gone. That was the reality for the Indiana Fever when Caitlin Clark was ruled out after injuring her ankle in a high-contact game with the Seattle Storm just weeks prior. The footage of her limping off the court had dominated headlines, and the uncertainty surrounding her return turned into a dark cloud hanging over the team. Analysts debated how long the Fever could hold on without her. The consensus: not long. Some fans, seeing their team's record without Clark, weren't even shy about lowering their expectations. The season's basically over, one fan had commented on social media, echoing a sentiment too many shared. But the Fever weren't just facing adversity, they were facing the Minnesota Lynx, a team practically engineered to win games like this. Let's set the stage.
You mentioned the Fever are undermanned. They're without their point guard and their scoring sensation and Caitlin Clark, and they were down 13 points to the Minnesota Lynx early in this game. Stephanie White went to her bench, and she brought in Sydney Colson. That became a steadying force. Sophie Cunningham came in and just made it a more physical contest. The Lynx had the crowd into it early, and in the second quarter, the Lynx went on an 8-minute drought and did not score.
The Lynx weren't just good, they were dominant. MVP frontrunner Nafisa Collier had been torching defenses all season, leading her squad to yet another top-tier seeding. And this wasn't just any regular season game, it was on their home court, where the Lynx traditionally turned matchups like this into statement wins. Fans in the arena expected a comfortable victory, and even some of the broadcasters hinted that the Fever might as well be stepping into a buzzsaw. There was no Caitlin Clark to anchor them, and the odds could not have been more uneven. Leading into this game, the Fever had shown a stark contrast in their performances with and without their star guard. With Clark on the court, they averaged 92 points per game and boasted one of the league's most potent offenses. Without her, that number dipped to a concerning 76 points, and their assist numbers plummeted. It wasn't just what Clark scored.
We've seen throughout the Fever's season so far, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. They've had some really good games. They beat the New York Liberty to break their winning streak, but then just a week prior, they lost to the Connecticut Sun, who are the worst team in the WNBA. Indiana Fever were without Caitlin Clark, without Damiris Dantas, and they also had just lost Dewana Bonner recently and gained Ari McDonald, but this was only her, I think, 3rd game with the team since she has been re-signed. They've had close games where they've completely blown the lead in the 4th quarter, games that they should have won. There's been drama on the outside, people wondering why Dewana Bonner actually left, like what's going on in the locker room.
It was how she orchestrated the game, creating opportunities for everyone around her. By comparison, the Lynx's consistency throughout the season was something to marvel at. They were allowing the 2nd fewest points per game in the league at just 77. When you put that defense up against a shorthanded Fever offense, the math looked bleak. And of course, those stark stats weren't lost on anyone. Sports media had a field day with the narrative leading up to tip-off. The Fever cannot function without Clark was said so many times in so many ways, it became a widely accepted talking point, but Coach Stephanie White wasn't interested in entertaining the defeatist chatter.
The Fever, they came into this game as double-digit underdogs, but they pull it off. How did they get it done, especially without Caitlin Clark in the lineup?
Yeah, I think they're doing a lot of things well. The Fever are a team that has been through a lot, right, this year with Caitlin's injury. They only scored 59 points on their home floor. I mean, it was a really impressive victory by Indiana with how they were able to change the tide early.
We've had to learn who we are without Caitlin, she told reporters during a pregame interview. This is where you find out who's willing to step up when the lights are brightest. It felt like a good sentiment, sure, but words like that often evaporate when the reality of a stronger opponent hits. And yet, this was supposed to be the classic mismatch. What better indication was there than the opening few minutes? The Lynx came out fast, riding on the energy of the crowd. Napheesa Collier drained a tough mid-range shot within seconds of tip-off. Rachel Bannum sunk a deep three just over 2 minutes in, and the Fever found themselves down 9-2 before most people had even sat in their seats. To any casual observer, it looked like the rout was already in progress. But something shifted, not instantly, but gradually as the game wore on. The Fever began to settle in, sticking with Coach White's plan and, perhaps most importantly, leaning on each other. The Lynx had a talent-filled roster. The Fever had hunger. Even as Minnesota seemed intent on showcasing just how big the gap was between these two teams, Indiana refused to fade. Slowly, the game started becoming less about what they lacked without Clark and more about what they still had.
The defensive scheme, like whatever coach on the Fever put together that defensive scheme to shut down Napheesa Collier and also make sure that they had a hand up. They showed grit, they showed energy, they showed how they came together, not only in the locker room, but on the court. They were moving the ball well. They did a fantastic job with that. And I also want to shout out Natasha Howard. She was MVP of the Commissioner's Cup. She ended the game with 16 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals.
By halftime, the Lynx were only up by 6, and that lead felt smaller than the score suggested. Fans at Target Center exchanged glances. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Fever weren't supposed to keep it close. They were supposed to be gassed after the first quarter. Suddenly, the storyline flipped. The guards were taking care of the ball. Aaliyah Boston became an absolute brick wall in the paint. Kelsey Mitchell's energy, especially on fast breaks, turned moments that could have been turnovers into points. The Fever weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Each possession felt more confident than the last. And here's where the takeaway hits. This wasn't Caitlin Clark's team anymore. Not on that night. Sure, she remained the heart of the franchise even from the bench, but what unfolded in those final quarters was proof that the Fever could do more. They could dominate even when nobody believed they had the tools. By the time the clock hit 0, the scoreboard didn't just reflect a victory, it reflected a team-wide statement. The Fever didn't win in spite of missing Caitlin Clark. No, they won because the players who'd been waiting for their moment finally seized it. But how did they answer the call so convincingly? Let's dive into the performances that carried them to glory. When you watch a team overcome the odds like the Fever just did, it's easy to forget it didn't happen all at once. Someone had to step up first, someone had to take control, and in this game, that was Natasha Howard. From the moment the Lynx got out to their big start, Howard became the anchor the Fever desperately needed. Her MVP performance didn't just stand out on the stat sheet. Those 16 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 assists definitely grab attention. It showed up in the moments when the Fever looked like they might lose their footing and fall behind.
And Napheesa Collier right now is the frontrunner for MVP. She is having an incredible season, and a lot of people thought Fee was going to go off. Like there was nobody on the Fever who could guard her, and Natasha Howard stepped up to that challenge in this game and also in the last game against Dallas. Like she was all over the place and she made such an impact, and some of Natasha Howard's impact on the floor doesn't always show up on the stat card. It has also taken her a few games to get into the flow of the Fever offense and really just like find her groove and find her place on this team.
Howard's defensive plays were the backbone of everything. When Napheesa Collier looked ready to put her stamp all over the game, Howard matched her at every turn. Collier got her points, sure, but Howard forced her into difficult shots and 5 turnovers over 4 quarters. Those weren't just empty stats either. The Lynx, who had shredded defenses across the league all season, found themselves facing a defender who was everywhere at once. This was the same Lynx team with their second best scoring defense in the WNBA, but it didn't matter because Howard disrupted their rhythm when it mattered most. And then there was Aaliyah Boston. For anyone who's watched this rookie, the promise has always been there, but this game felt like a shift. Boston's double-double, 12 points and 11 rebounds, was clutch, and she didn't wait for opportunities to fall into her lap. She took them. In the paint, she controlled the space like she owned it. Her defense against Collier and the Lynx front line created havoc. The Fever's team effort held the Lynx to just 39 points in the last 3 quarters, and that level of defense doesn't happen unless your bigs are putting in work. Boston wasn't just scoring or rebounding, she was screening, setting up teammates, and giving the Fever second chance opportunities when things didn't go right on the first try. Her dominance really showed in crunch time though. In the fourth quarter, when the Lynx looked like they might surge, Boston made sure that didn't happen. She locked down the paint, grabbing boards and forcing Minnesota to work harder for every single basket. After the game, Boston's comments summed it up perfectly. Everyone is important. I think everyone really played their role. We really handled that fourth quarter. That's the kind of mentality that turns tight games into wins. What we saw wasn't just stat padding, it was leadership. But let's talk about Kelsey Mitchell, because where would the Fever have been without her sharpshooting? Her 41% from three-point range wasn't just a number. It was the consistent spark the Fever leaned on whenever things started to look shaky. Mitchell set the tone early, driving into the lane in the first quarter and knocking down quick release threes before the defense could catch up. Even when Minnesota pressed hard on the perimeter, Mitchell adapted, finding her spots and putting up critical points in transition. Her energy was contagious, especially during fast breaks, where she turned what looked like harmless plays into momentum-shifting moments. And that kind of scoring under pressure, that's where stars are made. Statistically, the Fever were never supposed to win this game. Let's not forget, before this, Indiana's offense without Caitlin Clark had been borderline stagnant, averaging only 76 points compared to 92 when she played. But what happened here was the exact opposite of what the numbers predicted. Their ability to distribute the scoring load, from Howard's steady double-double effort to Boston's dominant presence in the paint, to Mitchell's deadly accuracy from deep, completely overwhelmed the Lynx. And what's just as incredible as the Fever's offense was how their defense managed to shut the Lynx down to just 34.9% overall shooting. It wasn't just that they worked hard, they worked together. The Fever's victory wasn't just about beating the Lynx or winning the Commissioner's Cup, it was a moment that shifted their entire narrative. Facing injuries, doubts, and a seemingly unbeatable opponent, they proved it doesn't take one star to win a championship. It takes heart, grit, and a team that refuses to give in. Caitlin Clark, watching from the sidelines, said it best. Guys, I just know everybody in the league is sick. That's not confidence, it's a warning. The Fever aren't just here to compete anymore, they're here to dominate. And if this is just the beginning, what comes next is terrifying.